Most people misunderstand power. They think dominance comes from raising your voice, taking control of the room, or fighting to be on top. But Sigma males know something different, something quieter, sharper, and far more effective. They don't compete for dominance, because dominance is loud, unstable, and always trying to prove itself. Instead, they remove leverage. They take away the one thing every manipulator, every ego-driven person, every false authority depends on: your emotional reaction. The moment a Sigma stops giving someone leverage, the entire dynamic collapses. The loudest person in the room suddenly loses volume. The most confident person loses footing. And the one who thought they had control realizes they never actually did. This is where the psychology becomes dangerous. A Sigma male doesn't need to fight you to win. He doesn't need to argue, assert, or outshine you. He simply stops feeding your influence. He withdraws his attention, his emotional availability, his validation, his compliance, and the entire power structure around him breaks in silence. People feel this shift before they understand it. They don't know why their tactics stop working, why their words lose impact, why their pressure goes unanswered. All they know is that something changed, and the Sigma is no longer within reach. Before we go deeper, I want you to think about this. Have you ever removed your reaction from someone and watched their behavior fall apart? Or have you ever realized too late that your leverage over someone was gone? Share one word in the comments that describes that moment. Awareness, silence, clarity, freedom, anything. And if you want more insights that expose the psychology most people never notice, subscribe to UltraWise. Missing these next videos means missing the hidden rules that powerful minds live by. He removes emotional leverage by staying calm when others expect a reaction. When tension rises, when voices sharpen, when the atmosphere thickens with expectation, a Sigma male does not step into the emotional arena where everyone else is waiting for him. Instead, he does something far more disarming. He stays calm. His stillness is not emptiness. It is strategy. It is the moment where other people realize they have miscalculated. They expected him to flare up, defend himself, or crack under pressure. They expected their words, tone, or accusations to hook into him, but he gives them nothing. And in that nothingness, their leverage dissolves. His calm becomes a mirror, reflecting back their intentions, their insecurities, their emotional volatility. While they escalate, he observes. While they throw emotion like weapons, he refuses to pick any of them up. His steadiness creates an imbalance so powerful that the one trying to manipulate him ends up revealing more than he does. This calm is not passive. It is controlled, deliberate, and trained over years of learning that the person who reacts first always loses the psychological upper hand. He knows that once he reacts emotionally, he becomes predictable. And predictability is where others find leverage. So he stays composed, not because he feels nothing, but because he refuses to give anyone access to the inner switches that control him. The silence he maintains forces the other person to fill the void with their own assumptions, fears, and overreactions. His stillness destabilizes them more than any argument could. As the interaction continues, he becomes the gravitational center of the conflict, not by force, but by restraint. The one who expected dominance ends up exposed, because their entire strategy depended on his emotional participation. Without that participation, their power evaporates. And as he stands there, unshaken, untouched, unreadable, they finally understand a truth that makes him uniquely dangerous. Dominance is loud, but real power can be completely silent. He breaks manipulation by refusing to play the psychological game people set for him. When someone tries to manipulate a Sigma male, they expect him to step into a familiar script, the script they've used on countless others. They wait for him to defend himself, to justify, to explain, to try to fix the situation. They expect him to respond emotionally, to react predictably, to be drawn into the web. But what they face instead is a man who does not enter the game at all. His refusal is not loud or dramatic. It is subtle, quiet, and profoundly destabilizing. Manipulators depend on engagement, on tugging emotional strings, on provoking responses, on triggering insecurity. When he gives them none of that, the entire structure collapses. They come with strategies, but he never becomes the opponent those strategies require. He watches the setup unfold, the guilt trips, the shifting narratives, the emotional bait, and he simply does not step into the arena. He simply does not step into the arena. Instead of arguing, he listens. Instead of defending, he observes. Instead of giving explanations, he gives silence. His lack of reaction forces the manipulative person to reveal their hand piece by piece, because manipulation only works when the target participates. His non-participation exposes everything. Their tactics escalate, their mask slips, and their intentions become unmistakably clear. He doesn't have to fight to win. He just has to refuse the invitation. This refusal is not weakness. It is a form of mastery, the understanding that some battles are designed to trap you, not free you. Manipulation thrives on emotional entanglement, but he cuts the thread before it can tighten. He doesn't match energy, doesn't mirror panic, doesn't rise to provocation. And because he does not play, the manipulator loses control. They cannot twist someone who won't bend. They cannot confuse someone who does not engage. They cannot dominate someone who does not accept the frame. By stepping outside the psychological game entirely, he breaks it at its foundation. And in the end, the manipulator is left exposed, disarmed, and powerless, while he walks away untouched, unshaken, and completely in control. He takes away control by becoming unpredictable and impossible to influence. Most people can be controlled because their reactions follow a pattern. Push this button, get that response. Trigger this fear, get compliance.
Offer this praise, gain access.
But a Sigma male breaks this entire structure the moment he stops responding in ways others expect. When someone tries to influence him, they quickly realize he cannot be moved by guilt, flattery, intimidation, or approval. He becomes the one variable they cannot calculate. His unpredictability isn't chaos. It is intentional detachment. It is the silent message that says, "You don't get to steer my direction." And once people no longer know how to influence him, they lose their power over him completely. He doesn't react when provoked. He doesn't shift behavior to gain favor. He doesn't abandon his principles for temporary comfort. Instead, he becomes unreadable. Manipulators rely on predictable emotional responses, but he gives none. One day he is deeply focused, the next he disappears into solitude. One moment he is observant and present, the next he is distant and evaluating. His movements follow his inner compass, not external pressure. This confuses anyone trying to guide or direct him because they cannot create a stable strategy without predictable input. He becomes a psychological blind spot. His unpredictability is not impulsiveness, it is freedom. It comes from not needing approval, not fearing rejection, not relying on external validation to function. Most people alter their behavior to keep the peace, to gain acceptance, or to avoid conflict. He does none of that. His choices come from internal calculation, not emotional reaction. And when someone can't be influenced, they can't be controlled. The moment he becomes impossible to predict, the balance of power shifts. People who once tried to shape him now have to adjust to him. They can't anticipate his next step, and that uncertainty makes them retreat, hesitate, or reveal their intentions through frustration. He doesn't dominate with force, he dominates by refusing to be moved. And in that quiet resistance, he becomes untouchable, unmanipulable, and firmly in control of his own direction.
He disconnects validation from the interaction, making dominance attempts powerless.
People lose their leverage over a Sigma male the moment he stops tying his worth to their approval. Most dominance games rely on one simple mechanism. Someone wants to feel validated, accepted, chosen, admired, or acknowledged. Take that desire away, and the entire structure collapses. A Sigma male understands this early. He realizes that those who try to control him only succeed if he needs something from them: respect, attention, praise, inclusion, or emotional comfort. So he removes that need. He stays grounded in his own internal validation, making every external attempt to assert control fall flat before it even begins. When someone tries to dominate him through criticism, he doesn't chase reassurance. When they withhold affection or attention, he doesn't panic. When they try to intimidate him with disapproval, he remains still, detached, unreadable. He does not negotiate for acceptance, because acceptance is not something he's ever built his identity on. This unnerves people who rely on emotional leverage. They expect him to bend, to prove himself, to react. But his sense of self doesn't move. It is anchored in a place no one else can reach. Slowly, those who attempt dominance realize they have no hooks in him. They cannot shame him into obedience. They cannot guilt him into compliance. They cannot flatter him into agreement. They cannot pressure him with fear of being disliked. He views validation as a currency he does not need to spend or receive. And that makes their attempts at control feel like shouting into a void. As he stops participating in the validation exchange, their power drains. People who once used approval as a weapon suddenly find they have nothing left to leverage. He becomes the only person in the room who isn't performing, competing, or seeking acknowledgement. And that independence shifts every dynamic. He doesn't rise by stepping on others. He rises by not needing what they use to control everyone else. In that quiet disconnection, dominance loses all its force, and he becomes completely untouchable. He uses silence to expose insecurity in people who rely on intimidation or ego. Dominance games crumble the moment silence enters the room, and a Sigma male understands this better than anyone. When others try to assert control through posturing, raised voices, sarcasm, or exaggerated confidence, he doesn't match their energy. He doesn't argue, defend, or escalate. Instead, he becomes still. He lets the noise fall around him, and his silence acts like a mirror, one that forces the other person to confront the insecurity behind their performance. Intimidators expect pushback. Egotists expect validation. When he gives neither, they are left alone with the emptiness of their own facade. His silence is not passive. It is strategic. He watches the micro-expressions, the twitch in the jaw, the shifting posture, the sudden break in eye contact when they realize he's not intimidated. That moment of quiet reveals everything. The person who tried to dominate him starts over-explaining, repeating themselves, or raising their volume, because they can feel their control slipping. Silence exposes how fragile their authority really is. They weren't expecting resistance, but the absence of reaction is something far more destabilizing. It turns the psychological game back on them. People who rely on ego hate silence because it doesn't feed them. It doesn't bend, it doesn't validate, and it doesn't give them emotional material to manipulate. A Sigma male understands that speaking gives power away, but silence pulls power in. Every second he withholds a reaction, the other person is forced to reveal parts of themselves they usually hide: insecurity, desperation, fear of losing control. Silence becomes an X-ray that shows their true motives in perfect clarity. Eventually, the dynamic flips. The one who tried to assert dominance begins to shrink, their false confidence collapsing under the weight of a calm presence they cannot penetrate. His silence becomes louder than their ego. It signals that he cannot be moved, cannot be manipulated, and cannot be controlled. In that unspoken moment, their power evaporates, not because he fought them, but because he refused to play their game. He withdraws his attention, collapsing the entire power dynamic instantly.
Most power struggles don't rely on strength, they rely on attention. The moment a Sigma male pulls his attention away, the entire structure of the dynamic collapses like a building with its foundation removed. People who try to dominate or manipulate him expect engagement. They expect him to defend himself, reassure them, argue back, or at least respond emotionally. But when he quietly withdraws his focus, when his eyes soften and his mind steps back from the conversation, they feel the shift immediately. The psychological tether breaks. Their control evaporates not because he fought, but because he stopped feeding the interaction with his presence. Attention is currency in human interactions, and a Sigma male can make someone feel bankrupt simply by refusing to spend any of it. Suddenly, the person who once held power over the dynamic finds themselves talking into emotional emptiness. Their statements land without impact. Their attempts to provoke fall flat. Their manipulative hooks don't connect. Even their dominance dissolves, because dominance only exists when someone acknowledges it. When he withdraws that acknowledgement, he turns the power dynamic into a hollow frame, one that can no longer hold its shape. This withdrawal is not dramatic. It's subtle, controlled, intentional. He doesn't storm out or make speeches. He simply stops giving life to the exchange. His face becomes unreadable, his body language neutral, his emotional availability gone. That stillness communicates something far more devastating than anger. It says, "You no longer matter in this space." And the human psyche is not built to handle that kind of detachment, especially from someone who once gave attention freely. People who depend on domination suddenly lose their footing. They overcompensate, raising their voice, becoming emotional, demanding a reaction, trying desperately to reignite a dynamic that has already died. But it's too late. Once he mentally steps away, there is no return. His withdrawn attention becomes a silent verdict, a quiet exit, a psychological shutdown that marks the end of their influence. In that single shift, he proves that the one who controls attention is the one who holds the real power, and he holds it by refusing to give it away. He walks away from anything that tries to control him, proving real power is freedom, not dominance. There is a moment, subtle, quiet, almost undetectable, when a Sigma male realizes something or someone is trying to contain him. It could be a relationship wrapped in unspoken expectations, a job disguised as opportunity but built like a cage, or a person whose affection comes with invisible strings. Most people negotiate, compromise, or cling to what's familiar. He doesn't. The Sigma male has an internal threshold that, once crossed, triggers a different instinct, the instinct to leave. Not out of rebellion, not out of ego, but out of a fundamental truth he lives by. Anything that threatens his freedom must lose access to him. When he senses control, he doesn't argue or fight for dominance, because dominance is not the prize he seeks. Control requires engagement. Freedom requires distance. So he chooses the path that protects his autonomy, even if it means walking away from comfort, stability, validation, or something that once felt meaningful. People often mistake this for fear of commitment or emotional coldness, but it's the opposite. He is committed to his inner peace, to his standards, to the identity he built through hardship and self-reliance. and he will never sacrifice that foundation to satisfy someone else's expectations. His exit is not dramatic. He doesn't slam doors or leave chaos behind. He withdraws like a tide pulling back from the shore, quietly, naturally, without needing justification. That absence becomes the loudest message he ever sends. Because when a Sigma male leaves, he doesn't look back, negotiate, or return to renegotiate the same terms. The space he leaves behind forces others to confront a truth they avoided. Their attempts to control him did not elevate them, they destroyed the connection.
In the end, his walkaway power is not about proving he's stronger. It's about proving he's sovereign. True strength is not in dominating others, but in refusing to be dominated. And the Sigma male's greatest display of power is not in what he conquers, but in what he refuses to be conquered by, stepping away with a quiet certainty that freedom is and will always be his final answer. When a man like this disappears from a dynamic built on control, something fascinating happens. The entire structure collapses. People who once believed they had influence realize they were only powerful as long as he allowed them near him. His absence becomes a mirror, exposing every insecurity, every imbalance, every expectation that quietly fed on his energy. And while others scramble to understand what happened, he's already moving forward, clearer, sharper, and more grounded than before. His silence becomes closure, his distance becomes rebirth, and his freedom becomes the proof that walking away was the smartest move he ever made. If this resonated with you, stay for what comes next, because the psychology of men who operate outside the system is deeper, rarer, and far more misunderstood than people realize. What part of this transformation do you think people overlook the most? Comment your answer with the word unbreakable so I know you reached the end. Subscribe to UltraWise for more insights that cut through the noise and speak directly to the mind most people never notice but always feel.